going to record this one in 420p instead of my usual 720 to 1080p because visuals aren't that important. It's just going to be me essentially thinking out loud about a few certain ideas. So, the importance of choosing your words and actions carefully during or front of and in situations where you're interacting with, for sake of necessary clarification, volatile people, emotionally volatile people. So thought association. So when interacting with these sorts of people who have very little, or rather, perhaps I should say, whose main driving force is the emotions that they feel and they project from their interpretation of things, rather than breaking things down through introspection and adjusting themselves and their actions accordingly. These sorts of people, they react. They react. They don't think, they react. Now, I mean, obviously they technically think, but they bypass the introspection process. They don't use a rubric of, should I be angry about this thing? They use a rubric of, this is something that someone else has done in my past or in a context where I've seen it that's negative in this sort of way, and therefore this is what this is. They use their own internal interpretation rather than the process of elimination in their own mind in order to reason and react. And when you're dealing with these sorts of people, problems present itself. Because, while perhaps not outright, they are participating in a sort of putting words in your mouth, creating the intentions that they believe you to be doing. Perhaps not directly, but in their own mind, this is what they're doing. And well, I'll be honest, and this may be giving them not enough credit, but I don't think they even know they're doing this in almost all of the cases. So, in this case, my own moral philosophy is to, since I am the sort of person who introspects my own psychology and others, and I delve deeply into this sort of thing, I, just for my own philosophy, consider it almost my duty to bridge the gap there, and figure it out for them. So you can take whatever philosophy you want from this. It doesn't matter to me right now. But I'm going to be framing this within that sort of frame of me taking this as my moral duty and explaining this process, and why it's why I should personally be careful to read into people enough so that I can disseminate what intentions they're projecting from me through their own sort of filters. Because I do see this. I've seen this enough times to generally recognize it very accurately. So these people, through this audio association, and it's different for every person, but the mechanics are generally the same. They'll take something you say or something you do, and then in their mind it'll twist. Perhaps twist isn't the technically accurate word to use, and in the colloquial sense I think it'll work to brush over explaining that concept. And they twist it in their own head, and it sort of comes out as this, you're the bad guy who's trying to subjugate me. And they often don't, I mean, they pretty much never recognize that reality is not what they seem, because it's filtered through this lens of, what has happened to me in the past via my own interpretation, and what has been the context that I've gleaned from this in the past, rather than what is objective reality in the moment. They see these symptoms, and they sort of pair it to this rubric of their past and what they believe to be the a generalized sort of label of this type of person. And it's a very, very damaging way to view things, but I won't get into that right now. It's like an hour-long fucking conversation at least. So when dealing with these sorts of people, so let's say use a specific word. I'll use that as an example. A specific word that they associate with a certain mentality that they project their own sort of status of being with. Like, say you use the word victim, and they have a personal association of using this to characterize themselves. And you can often tell this because they have a they have a very transparent, many times they have a very transparent way that they use words. They'll use these sorts of words to describe themselves or describe situations, and it's sort of like a subconscious external portrayal of their own thought process and subconscious, and they're them relating to this word. So when you use this in a flipped context, it can go a number of ways. It can dramatically backfire on you and make them even angrier, or it could be used in a context and in a way that could help them to see the error in their way, based on the framing of how they see this word. Now, getting into doing that is not something I want to I want to put on video, at least not yet. Just mainly because I don't like giving people tools to manipulate others. I only want to help people understand the mindset of others. If I've already gotten into the mechanics of that, it's dangerous to let people, know how to manipulate others. So they do this. So simply recognizing that can help you in your every day-to-day reactions with these sort of people. Just noting the sorts of words they use and in what contexts and things like that can help you to understand whether or not they have associations with these words that fit into complexes. So say they've had a traumatic past, and they use the word when they explain a certain sort of trauma. They use a very specific word, such as let me try and get more specific than a victim or something like that. Okay, let me try and rephrase into terminology. Like, say they use the term. Let me pause this and think of a good example. Right in the back. So let's say the term treating like a child. Let's say someone has a complex being treated like a child. This could be from a number of mindsets, whether it be this person feels as if they've been treated wrongly as a child, or it could be a mislabeled superiority complex, or not superiority complex, I don't know terminology for this, equality complex, where they feel like they are being undermined. Or no, rather they're projecting a superiority complex onto others. And this could be a sign of that. It could be, terms like this. If the subject of study, I will call the person who we are dissecting the mindset of. If the subject of study latches on to, uses the phrase treating like a child in a very specific way with a specific intention, you can disseminate that they have very specific, very, very strong personal feelings, not just strong feelings, but personal feelings. Now, mind you, a lot of times strong feelings, you have a very specific connection to personal events and things like that, but we're talking purely about very obvious, easy to decipher, easy to point out complexes here. So let's say they have that. Using the phrase treating like a child already inherently in their own mind has more power of provoking an emotional response in a certain way depending on the context it's used. I'm not going to give you that context again. I'm not trying to give anyone a fucking rubric for manipulating others here. But making yourself aware of such a thing and what may or may not be in this person's past, that they are, it is a reflection of, this wording is a reflection of that mindset and those beliefs internally. Just simply being aware of that is already enough to avoid or use their own language that is psychologically coded to themselves by themselves via their own psychology in a way that can de-escalate emotional situations like that. And same for actions and things like that. Say there was I'm trying to get like the second layer of psychology, because now I'm going to have to dissect another person's psychology within the same person's psychology. Okay, so say this person has a traumatic event in their past and they have association of behavior. Like, for me, right now, I'm moving my hand. Obviously, this is a reflection of my psychology. Something subconsciously within me is driving me to convey some sort of unconscious message with me moving my hand right now. I mean, it could be other things as well, but it doesn't have to be like, I'm trying to convey something to you. Like, it could just be a reflection of, that this may be subconsciously helping me, or at least I may think that it's subconsciously helping me. It may not actually help me at all, but there's all sorts of things that could come with. But let's say this person had an abuser in the past who treated them like a child, and had certain mannerisms, which they believe, the quote-unquote abuser in this situation, had very specific mannerisms that were associated with these acts. This person then entail the subject of study here, not the abuser, but the subject of study could entail these specific actions as a subconsciously as a symptom of this sort of abusive complex, where when they see it later in life, it is to them either conscious or subconscious red flag signaling to them. And in the right sort of mindset, it could be an even more prominent red flag to them. So if you're in a sort of heated situation with these sorts of subjects of study, with these complexes, behavior also matters a significant deal, because certain behaviors they may attribute to certain things. And now, mind you, this is kind of where the raising your fist, instinctual, cowering reaction comes. That sort of stereotype. These are those kinds of mindsets. They have a behavior of which they associate with certain things, and it registers at an unconscious level because they have a complex about it. So it's like that. And same thing. So I haven't delved far enough in exploring this to say whether or not it's definitely the same thing when it comes to words, but it does seem to follow, at least mechanically, some of the same lines. That's what I'm trying to convey here. There are similarities, patterns that they seemingly follow. So recognizing this, that the core of the complex is in itself complex, and that you can sort of, I don't want to say reverse engineer, but maybe reverse engineer. You could reverse engineer or forward engineer another way from the complex or to the complex based on these behaviors that are triggering to the subject of study, or words that are triggering to the subject of study. You can disseminate what to avoid and how to use these sorts of behaviors to de-escalate a situation. That's really 15 minutes in. That's as much as I'm gonna unload on this video. There will be plenty of others. It's been I think a couple of years since I've actually put any of my psychological thoughts into video, and I think it's about time. So, probably gonna start a YouTube series on this. So.